Have you ever found yourself trying so hard to make a relationship work, only to feel like you're pushing them further away? Sometimes, the more we chase, the more we lose. It's a tough pill to swallow, but there's a common piece of wisdom that says, if you love something, set it free. In relationships, giving someone space can be one of the most powerful moves you can make. It might feel counterintuitive, but the truth is, when you allow space, you allow growth, both for yourself and for your partner. In this video, we'll explore how giving her space can be your hidden superpower and why it's often the key to unlocking a deeper, more meaningful connection. Stick with me till the end, because I'm about to share some insights that will completely change the way you approach relationships. Trust me, this could be a game changer. The importance of emotional independence in relationships. Emotional independence, it's a concept that sounds simple at first, but when you really dig into it, it's like peeling an onion. Layer after layer, there's more to uncover. And, let's be real, it can be tough. The idea that we should rely on ourselves for emotional strength rather than expecting it to come from someone else, especially in a relationship, is challenging. Yet, this is one of the keys to creating a healthy and fulfilling partnership. I remember a time in one of my past relationships when I felt like I couldn't function without the constant presence of my partner. Their mood, their words, their actions, it was like my emotional state was always tied to theirs. If they were happy, I was happy. If they were upset, so was I. But here's the catch: when we're too dependent on someone else for our emotional well-being, we give away our power. We hand over control of our emotional state to someone who isn't responsible for it. That's not love, that's something else entirely, maybe codependency. A few years back, I stumbled across a quote by the legendary philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche that hit me hard. He said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow." It struck me because it reminded me that my happiness, my emotional stability, couldn't be based on anyone else. It had to come from within. But how do we make that shift? How do we get to a place where we can still be deeply connected to someone while standing on our own 2 feet emotionally? Let's think about it for a moment. Emotional independence doesn't mean shutting your partner out or pretending you don't need them. That's not healthy either. It's about creating a foundation inside yourself, a sense of inner peace that doesn't crumble when the external world shakes. It's about learning to process your feelings, set healthy boundaries, and not rely on someone else's validation to feel good about yourself. When we're emotionally independent, we're better equipped to deal with conflicts. Instead of reacting impulsively, we have the space to pause, reflect, and choose a more measured response. I can't tell you how many times in the past I've gotten into heated arguments just because I felt like my sense of worth was on the line. That's a dangerous game. But once I started recognizing my own value, not through the lens of someone else's approval, those moments became less about confrontation and more about understanding. Psychologically speaking, this independence is rooted in self-esteem. It's a reflection of how much we value ourselves, separate from the validation of others. In relationships, especially romantic ones, if we constantly need someone to make us feel complete, we risk creating an unhealthy dynamic. We might find ourselves emotionally exhausted, and worse, we might inadvertently drain the other person too. But when we embrace emotional independence, it's like finding an anchor within ourselves. We still love, we still care, but we no longer live in constant fear of losing it. In my experience, once I started focusing on my own emotional growth, I became a better partner. I was able to show up in the relationship with more presence, more calm, and more understanding. And when I gave my partner space, without the expectation of them filling every emotional void for me, it actually brought us closer. It wasn't about isolation, it was about freedom. Freedom to be ourselves, both together and apart. Emotional independence is a game changer. It's not about detaching or becoming distant, it's about finding balance. So, the next time you're caught in that whirlwind of emotional dependency, take a step back. Ask yourself, am I looking to my partner to fill a hole I can fill myself? And if the answer is yes, then start the journey inward. It's your hidden superpower. Trust me, you'll be amazed at how much stronger you become, not just for you, but for your relationship as well. How giving space fosters respect and personal growth. You know, there's something deeply powerful about giving space in a relationship. It's like a paradox. How could giving someone room to breathe possibly bring you closer? But trust me, it does. It really does. And, at its core, this isn't just about physical space. It's about giving the other person emotional space to grow, explore, and just be who they are, without feeling like they have to shrink or adjust to fit someone else's mold. I remember a time when I was in a relationship, and I didn't really understand the importance of space. At the beginning, I was all about the we mentality, what we do, where we go, how we feel. It was all intertwined. I thought that if I was constantly around, if I was always involved in every part of her life, it would show how much I cared. But here's the thing, when you're constantly in someone's face, constantly offering advice, constantly checking in, you might think you're being loving, but you're actually stifling their independence. And, over time, that creates an unhealthy dynamic. One day, I took a step back, totally unintentionally. I had my own things going on, my own passions, and for the first time in a while, I didn't feel the need to always be available. I didn't realize it then, but that moment of giving space started fostering a deeper respect between us. It wasn't about distancing myself emotionally or physically, it was about trusting her enough to let her navigate her own world. It gave her the freedom to explore who she was without the pressure of needing my approval or validation. It was like watching a plant bloom after being neglected for a while. It didn't need more attention, it just needed space to grow. Psychologically speaking, this is powerful. When we give someone space, we're essentially giving them permission to be themselves without the constant filter of our expectations. We're telling them, you don't have to be everything for me. You can still be everything for yourself. That's huge. It's a silent form of respect, a nod to their individuality. It says, I trust you to be you. Think about it for a moment. Relationships can sometimes feel like a tug-of-war between intimacy and independence. And yet, true intimacy thrives when both people feel secure enough to stand alone. Space doesn't break connection, it strengthens it. When we give each other the room to grow, we're also creating the environment for the other person to show up as their best self. They get to evolve, and so do we. Take the example of a tree. If you planted it in a tiny pot, it would grow but only to a certain size. It wouldn't have the freedom to reach its potential. But if you give it a large plot of land, the tree spreads its roots deeper and grows taller, fuller. Space isn't abandonment, it's opportunity. The space we give each other allows the roots of a relationship to grow deeper and stronger. I also love the words of the brilliant Rainer Maria Rilke, who once said, "The point of marriage is not to create a quick union of two personalities but a deep union of two souls." To me, that's what giving space is about. It's not about separating or becoming distant, it's about allowing each person to dive deeper into their own soul so they can come back with more to offer. In giving space, you foster respect. In that respect, there's a sense of freedom that allows each person to evolve in their own way. And when both people grow, they come back to each other with more richness, more understanding, more love. It's not a diminishing of the bond, it's the opposite. It's the flourishing of a deeper connection that's rooted in trust, autonomy, and mutual respect. So, next time you're faced with the temptation to hold on tighter, maybe it's time to let go, just a little. That space might just be the thing that brings you closer. The psychological impact of space on attraction and desire. It's funny how we often think that the secret to keeping attraction alive in a relationship is all about constant closeness, physical affection, or just always being there. But, paradoxically, one of the most potent ways to cultivate desire isn't by clinging tighter, it's by giving space. Let that sink in for a second. I'll admit, there was a time in one of my relationships when I was all about that high-frequency connection. I wanted to be available at every moment, to be constantly engaged, to always know what was going on in her life, what she was thinking, what she was doing. And while that might seem romantic, like you're the ultimate partner, it's a bit of a trap. What I didn't realize at the time was that this constant presence, though it felt intimate to me, was actually putting a bit of a strain on the attraction. Let me break it down for you. Psychologically, when you're always present, always accessible, you kind of start to lose your mystique. Desire, real desire, thrives on a bit of uncertainty. It's that sense of wondering about someone that keeps you intrigued, keeps you coming back for more. When everything is laid out in front of you, there's nothing left to discover, no room for curiosity. I've come to realize that attraction, on a deeper level, isn't just about proximity, it's about maintaining a certain level of space that allows the other person to feel that desire bubbling up inside of them. One of the most profound quotes I've come across comes from the writer Alain de Botton, who said, "The aim of love is not to secure constant proximity to the other but to give each other the room to grow." And I think that's where the magic happens. When we give each other space, whether it's physical space, mental space, or emotional space, we're not withdrawing or detaching. We're actually deepening the bond because we're creating the opportunity for desire to be reignited. You see, when you give space, you build this subtle tension, like a string pulled taut. There's room for longing, and in that longing, attraction flourishes. In my own experience, I noticed a shift in my relationship when I started respecting her space more. I wasn't constantly calling or texting, trying to fill every silence. And you know what? Something shifted. Instead of her just being there, she started becoming intriguing again. I wasn't just her partner, I was someone who existed outside of her every moment, and that made me a bit of an enigma again. This gave her space to miss me, to want me, and let me tell you, it made the times we spent together even more special. Now, this isn't to say that space means distance or emotional coldness. It's about the rhythm between closeness and independence. Psychologically, we need both to feel like we're in a healthy, dynamic relationship. If you're too available, too predictable, desire can fade. But when you leave room for unpredictability, time apart, moments to grow individually, the attraction remains dynamic and alive. You see, the mind and the heart are wired for novelty. The unknown is magnetic. Attraction isn't just physical, and it's definitely not static. It's an energy that fluctuates, ebbs, and flows, and space is a key ingredient in keeping that flow alive. So, don't be afraid of giving her room to breathe, to have her own world, her own passions. It's not about pushing her away. It's about creating a healthy distance where she can remember why she was drawn to you in the first place. And in turn, you'll rediscover the mystery and excitement that keeps the desire burning bright. In the end, giving space is a subtle but powerful way to ensure that attraction and desire don't fizzle out over time. It's about respecting the other person's need to grow while still maintaining that magnetic pull that keeps things interesting. So, next time you feel the urge to be there all the time, take a step back and let the distance work its magic. The more you give, the more you'll get back in ways you never imagined. Balancing connection and distance to maintain healthy dynamics. Balancing connection and distance in a relationship, it sounds like a dance, doesn't it? One moment you're close, deeply connected, and the next, there's that necessary space between you, just enough to let each person breathe and grow. It's a rhythm that, when done right, keeps everything flowing smoothly, but when it's off, it can feel like you're constantly stepping on each other's toes. I've been there. I've made the mistake of getting so wrapped up in staying close, in making sure we were always in sync, that I overlooked the importance of breathing room. And, honestly, it was exhausting. I thought that in order to show love, I needed to be available all the time, to be constantly connected, constantly present. But I didn't realize that in my attempt to nurture closeness, I was actually smothering the very thing that makes a relationship thrive: space. You see, what I learned over time is that relationships need both connection and distance. It's not about being hot or cold, distant or overly clingy. It's about finding a balance where both people can grow, individually and together. That's the secret sauce for keeping things healthy, interesting, and, dare I say it, even exciting. Let's take a step back and think about this from a psychological perspective. We all have these innate needs for intimacy and autonomy. On one hand, we crave connection, we want to be seen, heard, understood. But on the other hand, we also need space to be ourselves, to maintain our individuality. If we're too close for too long, the sense of autonomy starts to fade, and resentment can creep in. If we're too distant, we risk losing the connection altogether. So, it's this dance of give and take, push and pull, that creates a dynamic that feels not only balanced but also fulfilling. I'll give you an example from my own life. There was a point when I was dating someone, and we'd spend almost every day together. It felt amazing at first, being able to share so many moments, talking about everything, being connected on such a deep level. But over time, I started to feel like I was losing a part of myself. I wasn't spending as much time on my own passions or doing things that brought me joy independently. And I could sense that she, too, was starting to feel that slight strain of being two together all the time. That's when we hit pause. Not on the relationship, but on the constant togetherness. We made a conscious decision to spend a little more time apart, to rediscover the things that made us individuals. It wasn't about pulling away emotionally, it was about reconnecting with ourselves. And, in doing that, we came back to each other with more to offer. More space to share, more experiences to talk about, and more appreciation for the time we spent together. Psychologically speaking, this kind of balance fosters a healthier relationship because it allows both people to retain a sense of self. It keeps the excitement and mystery alive, while also giving each person the freedom to grow. Think about it like this: if you're always glued together, how can you miss each other? How can you have that deep, magnetic pull when there's no room to miss the other person? It's in the time apart, the small spaces between the moments, where desire and respect can deepen. And let's not forget about trust. When you give someone the space they need, you're showing them trust. Trust that they can grow, that they can do things on their own, and that your bond won't break because you're not constantly checking in. It's a subtle form of respect that can make the relationship stronger in the long run. So, if you're feeling that pull between wanting to stay connected and needing space, take a deep breath. Understand that this balance isn't just normal, it's necessary. It's about creating a relationship that's dynamic, healthy, and sustainable. Connection isn't just about proximity, it's about quality, and sometimes, a little distance can create the most meaningful closeness. So, don't be afraid to step back. Trust the space, and trust each other. That's when the magic really happens. Recognizing when space is needed and when to re-engage. Recognizing when space is needed and when it's time to re-engage, now that's a tricky one, isn't it? It's not always easy to pinpoint, and it's something I've learned through trial and error. There's no handbook for this kind of thing. You can't just look at someone and say, I see you need some space. It's a feeling, a subtle shift, and sometimes, it's not obvious at first. I remember a time when I was in a relationship, and I was so caught up in wanting to be a supportive partner that I didn't pick up on the signs. I'd be there, texting, calling, checking in, thinking that I was doing the right thing by staying present. But what I failed to realize was that my constant presence was actually overwhelming. She didn't need more of me, she needed more of her own space. And, honestly, I didn't get it. I'd try to make everything okay by talking through it, always wanting to engage, but I was missing the mark. The breakthrough came when I finally took a step back. It wasn't that I didn't care, in fact, I cared too much. But I realized that I was suffocating the space she needed to breathe. The thing is, sometimes the most caring thing you can do is not engage. It's knowing when to step aside so the other person can recalibrate, reflect, and center themselves. That's not distance, it's respect. It's the kind of space that allows both individuals to maintain their sense of self without constantly leaning on each other for emotional support. Psychologically speaking, people need different amounts of space at different times. It's a dynamic that shifts depending on emotional states, stress levels, and personal growth. Sometimes, we're so caught up in our own emotions that we forget the other person is navigating their own mental and emotional terrain. And that's where awareness comes in. Recognizing the need for space isn't just about interpreting silence, it's about understanding the why behind it. So, how do you know when it's time to give that space? One big clue is tension. Not the bad kind, the kind that makes you feel like you're walking on eggshells, but the kind that feels like an invisible weight. If you sense that your partner is pulling away, becoming more distant, or starting to withdraw into themselves, that's your signal. Don't take it personally. In fact, it's often the opposite. It's not that they're rejecting you, they're simply processing, recalibrating, and working through their own stuff. If you keep pushing, you risk creating more tension. So, give them room to breathe. It's okay to be apart for a while. But then there's the flip side. How do you know when to re-engage? When do you step back in and reconnect? This part is subtle, too. It's about sensing a shift. Maybe there's a change in the energy, an opening, a subtle invitation to talk, share, or just be present again. You'll feel it when they're ready, and it will come through in small ways. A glance, a change in tone, a more open posture. This is where intuition comes in. I've learned that sometimes, it's as simple as waiting for the right moment, waiting for them to come back to you when they're ready. It's like a pendulum swinging between closeness and distance. You don't have to force it. You don't have to fill every gap with words or actions. Sometimes, the best thing to do is allow the space to exist and trust that, eventually, the pendulum will swing back. In relationships, there's a fine line between giving someone room to grow and just disconnecting. Recognizing when it's time to step back and when it's time to re-engage isn't something you can always plan, it's something you feel. And the beauty of it is that when you get it right, when you allow the space for personal growth and then come back together, the connection is deeper, stronger, and more meaningful. So, trust the process. Trust the ebb and flow. And trust that when the time is right, you'll know exactly when to re-engage. It's a delicate dance, but once you learn it, it becomes your superpower. And that's a wrap, guys. Sometimes the best thing you can do in a relationship is to step back and give the other person the space they need to grow and reflect. It's not about being distant, it's about creating a healthy dynamic that allows both individuals to thrive. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a little reminder. And as always, remember that your greatest power comes from within.